So today we start a new series about building and publishing Shiny apps. We are gonna go broad, maybe not super deep into building Shiny apps because I want to cover also the aspect of publishing. I think that in at 2 degrees we have some expertise for building Shiny apps for production. So my goal with this series is to give everyone the tools that you need to create basically minimum viable products that then could be deployed to production with a little bit more effort. But I'd like to everyone that is interested to be able to get started using Shiny and get it published, get your products published so you can start communicating with your stakeholders even if they don't use R or if they're not interested in using R. So basically with Shiny you can do all the heavy lifting of R work yourself and then share with your stakeholder something that they can just put a URL in a web browser, and there they have access to your analysis, your results, and they can point and click and regenerate some analysis on the fly so they can answer their own questions. So that's the goal for this series. In particular, today is getting started. We want to build our first Shiny app, even if you have already built a Shiny app before. And also I'm gonna be showing how to deploy it to a service that is pretty simple to set up, which is shinyapps.io. The resource that we'll be following is the Mastering Shiny book by Hadley Wickham, which he's been working on this book for a while, but has been kind of officially released and published in print very recently, less than a month ago. So it's a good time to actually advertise this book. So let's get started. The book starts with chapter 1, which is what we're going to be covering now. The goal of this particular session is to give you an understanding of the major pieces of a Shiny app, which are basically two, which is the user interface and the server. The user interface, what it is all about how your application looks, and the server is all about how your application works. So the book does not cover a lot about publishing services, but we will be covering publishing services because I think we need them often, and it's good to have alternatives. So I'd like to kind of sample a few. So getting started is fairly simple. All you need is to create a directory, and inside that directory to put a file called apps.r. Just heads up that this particular meetup is going to be very formulaic, if that word exists. So basically, I'm gonna show you things, and the concepts may come a little later. So now it's more about, okay, this is how you do it, and then we can explain more in later meetups, which is an approach that Hadley uses a lot in his books. He gets the readers up and running very quickly, even if our mental models are still patchy, and then he kind of fills the gaps as he continues throughout the book. So that's the model that I'm going to be following. So I'm going to show you where I am. I'm at a new repository called DS Shiny, which will be hosting the different meetups that we run. For now, it's pretty much empty. It just has a license file and it has a README that shows the syllabus. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to create a directory to show you how simple it is to set up a Shiny app. So let's call it, say, my app or my first app. So here you have it. There is my new directory. So now inside that directory, I would like to create a new file. Let's save it as inside my first app, and let's call it app.r. The name is important because that name is going to be interpreted automatically by Shiny in a number of ways. To create, so this is the basic infrastructure. Now let's talk about the basic boilerplate that you need to create a Shiny app. If you go to the book, you will see that it looks a little bit complex, but the complexity will disappear once you understand how it works and also how to get that boilerplate immediately with a keyboard shortcut. So this is the boilerplate of minimal Shiny app. I'm going to show you now with one keyword shortcut how you can create this thing. Basically, all it's doing is first using the package library, the package Shiny, because Shiny is an R package, and then creating the two main components of a Shiny app, of every Shiny app: a user interface here, and a server, which in this case is empty. So this is minimal. It won't do anything. It will show the word hello world in a web page, but it won't do anything. And then it ends with a call to Shiny app, passing as arguments the user interface that we defined first and the server that we defined second. So that's the minimal skeleton of a basic Shiny app. How do we do that? Well, you can memorize that eventually, but you can also start typing Shiny and you will see Shiny. Okay, so if you start typing Shiny app, you will see that RStudio will, if you are working on RStudio, you will see this what's called snippet, this icon of a little paper, and it says snippet to the right, in curly braces. So if you hit tab, that will autocomplete that boilerplate that I showed you before. So basically, to follow the example that Hadley published in his first app, all we need to do here is to add the phrase hello world, and that's it. So we have all the components. We are first using Shiny, we are defining a user interface, and we are defining the function that will contain, or that will describe how our application works, which for now it's empty, and then we put all those pieces together with a call to Shiny app. Now, to demystify this, I'm going to show you what these elements are. So the call to fluid page, so fluid page is just one what's called layout function. All it does, it creates HTML. So the beauty in a way of Shiny is not that it's going to give you the most beautiful, most interactive, most perfect app. Instead, its beauty is that it curates some of the diversity of options that you have in the world of HTML and gives you a bunch of tools, a few set of tools with which you can create very quickly very powerful web pages without knowing too much about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and stuff like that. So if I run fluid page, the call to fluid page on itself, and I run it to the console, well, I get an error because I didn't attach Shiny. But if I did, what I would expect to see here is just HTML. So if you know how to write HTML like this, then you may not even need a lot of Shiny, right? But Shiny will do all that HTML weird stuff under the hoods for you, so you don't need to know about that. So that's its beauty. It's the ability to give you minimum viable products, interactive for creating reports that you can share with your stakeholders, even if they don't care much about R. All right, so how do we actually run the app? Well, there is this button called Run App. And I'm not very sure, but I think this button becomes available when a call to Shiny app exists in a file. Maybe let's try removing this from here and see what happens. Yeah, so if I remove that call to Shiny app, see how the button Run App disappeared. So I'm going to undo that and save again, and that the bottom appear. So what exists in the file is telling RStudio that this is a Shiny app, and that's why we get this button. So one way to run our app is to click that button there. And what we'll see is this window that should pop up anytime soon. Let's click reload. There it is. Okay, it pops a window that is kind of an RStudio window, but also we get an address. So if we put this address on our web browser, we will see the same app in our web browser. We can also click here on open in browser, and that will do just that. Basically, we'll navigate to the web browser to that particular address. So as you can see, it's a very boring app. All it says is hello world, and it proves what I discussed before. It proves that the components that you put inside your UI, so here, determine how your app looks. This app does nothing right? Because we didn't do anything inside the server, so there is no button, no interactivity, no nothing, no computation. And that is because our server function here is empty. So there is nothing that describes how the app works. But we're gonna change that very soon. But before we actually get there, I would like to show the process from end to end. So first, I'm gonna show how to stop the app. You can click here on the stop button, or if you have that window open, well, not this one, the web browser. If you have that window open that now closed automatically, you could also just, close the window and that will stop the app. But to complete the process and integrate the whole application from end to end, I would also like to show how to publish it in a remote server, right? So what we saw before is that the app was being published in our own computers, but what if you want to share your app with someone else? You want to probably publish it online. So one way to do that is with this little button here, right? So let's run the app again. This time, I'm gonna do it differently. I'm gonna source this file, and there's a keyword shortcut in RStudio to source a file, which is Shift-Control-Enter. So that will, as you can see, will run the run app, calling the directory where the app lives, and we should have somewhere there. Again, I'm surprised that I'm not getting that window popped up, but let's click that again. And again, we get this button. So this button is available here from the window when you launch the app, and also on the file itself, with slightly different options in one or the other. So if you click publish, you will get access to this pop-up window, which allows you to set up different accounts where you may want to publish your Shiny applications. If you don't have a Shiny Apps.io account, you can set it up for free. Up to 5 applications you get for free. So I recommend you do that so that you can practice the things that we see in this meetup. Whenever you reach the limit of 5, you may start deleting older ones and adding new ones just to play. The setting up process is pretty straightforward. RStudio does a very good job at showing pop-ups with instructions about how to do it. So I'm not gonna cover it now, but remember there is a help desk for many of us. Mine is on Wednesdays, I think at your something like maybe, I think it's 3 p.m. or so, around that. So if you are struggling setting your account, let me know and we can work with it together. So for now, I'm gonna assume that you have successfully set up shinyapps.io. I'm gonna click there and say publish. Notice how the title appears by default using the name of the directory where I put my file app.r. If you want, you can change it to anything, but I think that the name is okay. So I'm gonna hit publish, and this will take a little long, so we can probably, it's telling me that I already published this because in my try run I did publish it. So this application is already online. And while this new version of the app runs or is being deployed to shinyapps.io, I'm gonna move on with the book and show you how to do some more interesting things, because for now our app is super boring. So let's go back to here. Let's go back to the book if I find it. There you go, here. Right, so we have already deployed and hopefully publish in a moment, publish our first app, which is empty. We learn how to run it by sourcing the file or by clicking the run button, and we learn also how to stop it by clicking the closing the window or clicking the stop button. So we cover all of that, and it's time to add some UI controls. So UI stands again for user interface. So you wanna add stuff in there so that the user can point and click different buttons in the web page, and that will eventually translate to computations on the back end. So basically, the user will be clicking things, and then Shiny will interpret those clicks as actions that then Shiny under the hood has to run, maybe create a computation, show some results. So in this case, what we're going to be using as an example is First, we're going to be listing all the data sets that live inside a package that comes with R. The package is called datasets, and it comes with a bunch of datasets that you can play with. Then we are going to be creating a summary of one specific dataset that the user chooses. And finally, we're going to be creating a table similar to the tables that you get with the view function in R. So first, we're going to be adding only the user interface without connecting that user interface to the kind of R backend. So we're going to just create the page, but not give R any instruction about how to actually do the work. Let me show you what I mean. So let's go back to the app. Remember that if we want to change the user interface, the place to do that is here, under the UI function. So I'm going to just paste this for now. There you go. And maybe I'm going to stop the app because it's taking a little while, and I can show you the result later. Stop deployment. So I would like to unpack a little bit what's going on here. The most important bit here is probably this one. So what's happening here is that if you use the function ls, you're familiar, very likely you're familiar with the function ls. So if you do just ls, it will try to see if there is any object defined in your global environment. So it will default to the global environment. So if x takes 1 and I do ls, I could expect it to tell me, okay, there is an object called x, right, in the global environment. But the global environment is not the only environment that ls can read from. It can also read from the environment of a package. So the way you tell ls to look into the environment of a package is by saying ls package column and then which package. So in this case, the package that we're interested in exploring is the package dataset. So if I run that code, what I get is a vector with all the names of the datasets that live in the package datasets, right? So we are going to be using that, but the user, we don't want the user to type anything. We want the user to click things. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sticking that call to ls inside this very convenient function that is called select input. With it, we give the user the ability to see this list of, in this case, datasets, but it could be a vector of anything, and then they will click the one that they want, right? So that's exactly the thing that we want. And remember that anything that goes inside the user interface is just a convenient way to create HTML. So if I print to the console all this line, the entire call to select input, what I expect to see is, as you see now, a bunch of HTML. But look how complicated that HTML becomes, right? So writing all that by hand could be a total nightmare. So thanks Shiny for doing this easy for me. And then there's these other two functions that also create HTML. Maybe it's going to be clear what they do once we see them in action. But basically, these two functions here will be creating spaces for things to exist. The two things that we want to add to this app is one, some code, which is the result of the function summary on any of the datasets that the user chooses, and then second, a table to make that dataset like beautiful and on the screen. So let's run the app now and see what we get. Let's do run app. Now that we have some more components in the user interface, for some reason I'm finding that I need to click run app and then reload app, which is surprising. And also surprising that it's taking a little while. So what I'm going to do is I stop and I'm going to restart my R session, which sometimes helps a lot. So now again, I'm going to do Shift Control Enter to source the file that we have here. This triggers the function run app. And it is listening. First, maybe I have set up something in, let's see. Yeah, maybe I set up something so that instead of here is the window apparently. There you go. Here is the window. It looks like it was opening the window behind other windows, so we couldn't see it. So as you can see, what we have here is our little web page created with Shiny, the name dataset, so this word here, dataset, comes from the label that we gave to this control. The control is not any control, it's a select menu, right? Like a drop-down menu, and that comes from having called the function select input. And then the choices that we get in here come from that call to ls package datasets, right? Remember that's exactly what we were doing. So that's the way the user will be interacting with this code, and then we'll be, like choosing one dataset from here, say, air quality, and that will be the submission of the user to the app. And then what the app will do is something that we still are yet to define. We do not see the results of table output and verbatim output because we haven't done anything. So those functions just create a space. So basically it would be a white space that you can see or that you cannot see here and here, but you can imagine that in a moment there we're going to be putting stuff. And to do that, we need to modify the server function to start doing something useful. So let's go to the book, scroll down a little bit more, and let's get to the part where we add some behavior to our app. And that is bringing us to the end. I know that, or close to the end, I know that we have 5 more minutes, and that this is usually when people kick me out. But let's do this quickly, because here I can actually make this a little shorter. So again, remember that this meetup is not about explaining how everything works. It's most like what it is, and motivating you to learn more and to stick with this series. So I'm not expecting that you will immediately understand what's going on here. I will try to do my best to explain in the little time we have what's going on here. But first, I just copy and paste the code that comes from the book, and I explain the following. The interesting behavior is that of the summary that we want to build and the table that we want to build. As you can see, the word summary appears here at the top. We define an identifier for the object that will contain such a summary, and then we need to create such a summary. And we create that summary here. What is it? Okay, so once the user chooses a data set, say air quality, let's print it here to the console. Say that the user chooses the package, the dataset air quality. So I'm going to remove. So notice that input $dataset is just a placeholder, but it will be internally, once the user chooses something, it will be replaced by something like, for example, air quality, if the user chooses air quality. So then we use what's happening here, the behavior that we are adding is we are using the function get to get the dataset air quality from the package dataset. So that will produce a table, basically retrieves that dataset and prints a table, right? So on the dataset object here that we define here then contains such a data frame, and then we use the function summary to create a summary of that dataset. So basically what we will be expecting the user to see is a call to summary and the result of get. Oops. Something like this. Okay, this summary is what should be printed to the app. Same thing here. The second part of the app, that's pretty much the same thing, but instead of displaying it in the form of a summary, it is displaying it vanilla as is in the form of a table. That is why we need to tell Shiny, given that we have the same object being printed, we need to tell it what kind of print output it is. And we need to use a specific rendering function for the different outputs. So if what we are printing is just code, then we use we render with the function render print. And if what we want to print is a table, then we use the function render table. This is very difficult to remember, but luckily there is a cheat sheet, which I'm going to share later in the issue associated to this meetup. So the cheat sheet contains all the render table, render print, and render whatever functions, same with the select inputs or whatever input functions, and all the output functions. So all that you need to know at least to get started, fits in that cheat sheet, which is a great companion for this meetup. So okay, let's see how this works now. So we learned that to basically we are pairing the IDs that we created in the user interface with objects that we define with exact name on the server function. So there is a summary, there is a table here, and there is a table here, right? So now the IDs now are connected to an actual object that then displays the behavior that we want. So let's run that app now. And let's see if, where is my window? There it is. Okay, I'm gonna open this in the web browser because it looks prettier. And now we have a more interesting app where we allow the user to click here in that drop-down menu, select something like air quality, and immediately they will get in those two spaces that we defined the two things that we defined, the summary first and then the table. All right, there's a little thing that I wanted to talk about, but we may not have time to cover, which is, we're gonna cover it in more detail in another meetup, which is the how to create a reactive expression. But instead, I'm gonna stop here and see if in the 1 or 2 minutes that we have any questions or comments about what we have just seen. Yes, go ahead, CJ, I think. Yeah.
So, my understanding or knowledge of Shiny may be far outdated, but I thought or remembered that before it seemed like they were always suggesting to you to make a separate file, a UI file, like UI.r and then also server.r, and it seems quite confusing to me because you had to make sure they were in the same directory and name the same thing. Is there a reason those are disconnected? Is this a new feature that they're always promoting this where it's all in one script now, or like what's the status of that situation, if you even know what I'm talking about?
Yes. As far as I know, the structure that you mentioned is still valid and it still works. It's backward compatible. But also, as far as I know, the style that is presented in the Mastering Shiny book is kind of the latest opinion about current practices, basically. So some things have simplified, including modules. You know, the way to create modules now is a little simpler than before. And that's why this book requires Shiny greater than 1.5.0. So if you have an older version, I recommend you update. So yeah, that's the status. I think that what we're gonna be showing is, Hadley started working with Joe, and so the developer of Shiny, and so I'm pretty sure that he endorses what Hadley wrote. Then he, for some reason, removed his name from the authors list, but I'm pretty sure that they work very closely together. So I would take that as the latest opinion about how to use Shiny. At least that's my interpretation. All right. Any other question or comment? No. Yeah.
Yes, Maro, sorry. Yeah, just one small question. I haven't been able to go through the book that we are following now, but I was wondering if you have some use cases for Shiny apps to like try to see how do they look at the end, or how complex can they be, just to have an overall overview, or what kind of projects we can design by using Shiny apps.
Yeah, that's a great one because it's a consistent request. What I suggest is, because I've seen uses internally already, so instead of me probably trying to hunt for cool projects, I propose that anyone in this series, and actually I'm going to probably send something in coding channel, basically it would be great for one session that is just people showing demos of what they've done, just to show the use case, not so much maybe the use case and one interesting implementation detail, but not like getting into like reading code basically. So thanks, Daisy. I think that will make a cool session in the future.
Great, thanks a lot.
All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. See you when I see you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks.